the thing that matters. Good morning, welcome to Saturday Roundtables, or good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever time zone you're in. This is where we talk about our projects, explain a bit of what they are, what we've been up to, what we're going to be taking on in the next week, and anything we could use help with. And then if somebody would like, they sit in the hot seat for the hour and for the remainder of the hour, and we focus on their project. So who would like to start?
I guess I could start. So for Reason Score, I am actually hiring someone to do some internet research on debates. I'm going in with a group called the Society Library. They are a nonprofit, and they're also hiring someone to do research on campaign, something with the election coming up. So we're going to kind of combine forces and have the same researcher do some combined work. Outside of that, I haven't been doing much on the project. I'm on vacation for most of next week. I'll be back by Friday for the regular meeting, though. And I think I've come to the point where I've decided I need to start making money again. So I have to go back to Game A for a while. So I'm going to start looking for things that I find interesting. I learn new skills. I get to work with people that are that I can learn from and build relationships. So those are and then, get paid a living wage, not what I was making before, but about half of what I was making before. So that's the plan. We'll see if it happens. That's it for me.
All right, I guess I can go. For Wiki Election, I've been working on the specs for the next version of the prototype. And as well, I've also been, I went out and grabbed all the data for the Congress and the Senate in the US and found some of the sort of good underlying data from one of the sites that we found when I was sort of quasi in the hot seat for where do we find data. We spent that 5 or 10 minutes coming up with a bunch of places to get data. One of the ones towards the end had a really good list. It was actually on GitHub, and it is like a list of all of the current Congress people and senators and all the former ones and the various things to do with legislation. So that'll be quite useful going forward. So I've been prepping that so that when Matoush has done the legislation part of the prototype, we'll have some data to throw in there, and we might be able to see some quasi-interesting information soon in the prototype. Granted, not anything unique, but at least it'll be there and we can build on it. So that's it for me.
Okay. Well, I've got three things that I'm working on, which are all in a kind of state of flux at the moment. And in terms of definitions, haven't really got any for them just yet. So I'm just going to let stuff emerge. But yeah, so that's all I've got to say at the moment.
All right, I can go while Matoush gets set up. So my project is solution raising. We pick a new topic every week and talk for an hour and come up with a solution. And this last week we tackled shelter and came up with an amazing solution that made me really want to focus on these specific 4 solution raisings of shelter, the community, the meta community, education, and food. Because with that, you can free 10,000 people from Game A and they can concentrate on Game B. This last week also, I was a guest on a podcast that is Future Thinkers adjacent called Upgrading Society, that has a very cool premise of they kind of are doing what we're doing. They have someone who they interview and they score them based on 3: the clarity, the action, and the potential. And then they're going to be following them through. And so meeting with them several times and figure out how to kind of connect them with each other. And they have Future Thinkers audience, from what I understand. So they're starting with more of a foundation of viewers. It isn't out yet, but I'm excited. I mentioned, of course, our sense making and Together Tech, and Game B was what we were focused on, but I also mentioned solution raising. So some of them will be coming to that hopefully on Wednesday and continuing forward. And then after this today, Carrie, Yvette, and I are meeting for Culture of We, starting with 3, which I am super excited about. Just seeing what comes out of that, and including next week when we're focused on solution raising itself and kind of what we do to move forward. So that is what, and so because of those 4, what I could use help with from someone is a spreadsheet that is able to be used to calculate the shelter piece that we talked about this last week. Because I tried to do it myself and it nearly broke my brain yesterday. I kind of could almost do it, but I need someone who can do Excel spreadsheets. I kind of can do the basic math, but not the how many months does it take for everyone to get housed and how much rent and that kind of thing. So that is what I can use help with. And Matush, do you want to give your update?
So first I did some more conceptual than actual coding work on Wikilection, and there is something I would like to talk about scoring and about metrics later, hopefully, because it's the picture that appears and it starts to emerging as interesting, so we need to talk about it. Second, my own personal project is Hyperlogos, which is the visualization, and it wears a lot of hats, as they say. Did some work on that as well. Participated in a meeting about mind mapping in Open Global Mind. And yeah, it's going slowly but surely in the right direction.
All right, now what do we focus on for the next hour or the remainder of the hour? Because no one really has anything hot seat. My need for a spreadsheet is not going to be in the hot seat because
I have something for you. Because as I said, I've been working on stuff on the back end and content types. What specific, right? I'm just going to ask you as a general, just, you know, in terms of content types for stuff that you are doing that, you know, obviously this is what we're doing. I'd like to ask you, is there anything like, you know, you got a page, article, event, groups, what have you, specific to what you're doing? Is there anything that you can think of that you might like? So say like Facebook, the group, right? What do you think that's missing that you would like to actually have a content type for in terms of categorizing and organizing stuff? I think I've not explained that very well.
So do you mean things like, I mean, for us, video is a pretty obvious one that we're all going to need. Standalone images, possibly, if you just want to throw up an infographic, like some kind of a write-up where it's probably a combination of text and images. Do you mean stuff like that?
Yeah, and in terms of sort of like writing about your project and information that you want out there about your project that you'd like, you know, to be able to sort of like, right, we're doing this. Because I know there's sort of like articles and discussions and stuff like that as well. So things like that, really, because as I said, because of Drupal and that, and I've been going through all the fields and the entity references and how you can actually create a view of stuff with all these, you know, all the different types of content, and also the taxonomy terms and terms, and I forget the name for it now. You know what I mean? Like you can tag stuff, like, you know.
All of the content that a project might post, it's sort of its purpose.
Let me try and clarify a bit. So, and Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, but so in content management systems, you generally have content types. So in our case, I imagine, Carrie, did you already build one for a project?
Well, I'm in the process of just sort of like going through all the different types of fields and what you can have and how you can relate it and how you can gather content, different bits of content together.
So for an example, if you had a content type for project, you'd have project name, who the owner is, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you have a content type of blog article, content type of page. So it's any type of group of fields of data that move together as a group.
Yeah.
Right. So
like as I said, I'm shit at explaining things, so
it's not an easy concept.
and especially for me who doesn't like labels and anything.
Yeah, and content type's a really bad phrase because everyone thinks, oh, well, yeah, video, image, and it's like,
Yeah,
well, that's not what they, that's
or
what
like
they
the
mean.
category.
It's-
So is it kind of like different tables then?
yeah, it is tables.
Well,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm just thinking,
It exactly is stored as one's a table in most
Oh,
of the
all right.
So basically, like, because in terms of your projects and stuff, is there any specific content types that you might like to have that I haven't thought about yet? I think that's mostly what I'm trying to ask in a kind of
Do you have some
side
already?
way. Well, yeah. I'm just doing I'm just going through a couple of tutorials on how to put all the terms together and the taxonomy terms and the because you can have tags and you can have taxonomies, and as I said, you can basically field everything. You stick everything into its own field with whatever type of thing that you might like. You know what I mean? So, and because I'm just, I suppose, with projects and stuff, what would be kind of relevant to you and yours, basically, because if I can kind of get a grasp on that, then make something that's relevant, like so events, definitely for the videos and stuff, videos, images, groups, user groups. So Together Tech would be, and also would actually Together Tech be an actual a project itself, by the way?
I think so.
Right. Okay. So yeah.
That's the way we'd envision it.
Yeah. Okay then. Well, that's a start. So, in terms of like, cause I've already got the help wanted and the help needed, and who's involved, all the links to whatever they're doing, and stuff like that. But is there anything else that you might like or might want?
I can't think of anything else.
Right.
Yeah,
I think once we see the basics, some ideas might pop up. But...
Yeah,
exactly. I think as we actually start to try to like add some content, things will probably pop up. But it sounds like you've sort of got the basics covered to start with, which we can probably make do with.
Yeah. So as I said, I'll get the basics up and that, and then come and tell me what you like, what you don't like, what you don't want, and then after that we can talk about the back end of stuff as well. But like as I said, I'm just trying to get the stuff that you can actually just see without having to join and stuff like that. And because of the way Drupal's organized, you can actually do inline editing, so you don't have to, you can just do it. You don't have to go and find a menu. You can actually do it from the actual piece of content that you've done as well. So yeah. So I suppose that was I was trying to get my head around all of that and thinking what people wanted. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think as Bentley said, sort of the sooner that we can see, even just like even if you feel that it's only 60% done, as long as we can sort of see a project and see stuff that project is doing, I think that will help start putting some context around like, oh, okay, I can see how it's being structured, and oh, okay, I want these extra content types there, and so on. Like one of the things, I'm not sure if you have it. Do you have a spot to track people yet?
What's that?
Do you have a spot to track people as separate from projects, right? So like
yeah, you can actually do everything on users. So I hate that word, users.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
You can show that to the public, though. I know some things are really iffy about showing user information to the public.
Oh well, you could just have like, this is why I was thinking about the user groups. So say like Together Tech is maybe sponsoring this event. You know what I mean? For hosting the conversations and that. Like Jubilee's solution raisins will just have, I don't know whether Jubilee, you wanted just a kind of solution raisins group, user group. So that anyone who's coming to kind of solution raisins can see it's part of a bigger group. You know what I mean? So maybe have that. So be sponsored by, so each of the events, whoever's hosting it, is kind of like, I don't know whether you want me to use the word sponsor or just hosting the event or whatever, because if we get down the line sometime in the future where people are actually giving us money for things which will be like, which is nice, that we can maybe like, or maybe want to come and sponsor a conversation or something like that. We could have them separate if you wanted. I'm just trying to think far off into the future.
Right.
Sorry,
guess-
separate from. I was confused. What you're. Yes, I want to thank for solution raising.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand.
No, it's just like the user group for solution raisins, right? But because there's you can have events that are sponsored by somebody, or because obviously you could have it maybe sponsored by a user group, or somebody else might be hosting it. So to have the hosting, would you be a hosting group or
are user groups effectively projects then?
You could set them up as a type of content that they are. You know what I mean? And then that can be attached.
I'm talking for us, not for like the specific terms that Drupal might use. Like if I were to go navigate this site as just a user, especially somebody who's viewing it as the public, and I view a list of projects and I click on a project, am I viewing a user group at that point, or am I viewing something completely separate called, a project? Or
you're seeing the actual project itself, but it'll be kind of hosted by or sponsored by, and then you'll just when you click on that, that'll take you to a page of who that group is and what they're all about. You know what I mean? So they can get more information about. So like so say like if it was sponsored by Together Tech, right? They click on Together Tech, and there'll be a piece of content which will be basically a page saying that we're Together Tech, blah, 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 blah. Here's links, here's who we are. You know what I mean? So that would go to that and where to contact you as well. But that'd be part of the project thingy and all, Did that make that about as clear as mud?
So, Adriel, your concern about data privacy is usually there is a kind of a public and a private side of the user data. So as long as you make it, you just have to make sure you make it clear which pieces are public and which are private.
Yeah.
Although I think most people filling stuff in here, they'll expect everything to be public except for their email address, hopefully.
True. Yeah. I guess I'm also wondering, like, if we start to get, workers and like people that want to chip in on projects, but maybe not be like the public face of anything, they might not want their profile shown at all. Whereas I guess I'm kind of talking about like almost public personalities as a part of the projects, right? Like, so for example, if I go look at Reason Score, somewhere on there I'll probably see, Bentley is kind of the main/only person currently on that site who's a part of Reason Score. Then if I go to Together Tech, I'll see a list of people, and one of them is that same Bentley person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Carrie, you're going to have a way of associating people with projects.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, like, because obviously, like for the anonymous user, they'll just see the project and who's there, but they won't see any of the any details from what we've got in the back end or any conversations unless you want to make them public. They'll only see that. But any information that you want out in the public, you can see that. But I wouldn't be like, and if you wanted to show people where your links are to your personal profiles on various sites, there'll be stuff for that.
Right. Okay.
But it wouldn't be any kind of in-depth. You'd have to join to actually become part of, because I see it as just a container ship at the moment, and I'm a pirate, captain pirate.
So, Carrie, when you say back end, you're meaning the private area as opposed to the
because I'm just seeing it as a kitchen table now. Right?
Yeah, well, the only
kitchen
problem is
table
when
on the ship. You know what I mean?
When you're talking technology, the back end also it specifically means the server as opposed to the client. So we might find a different term for that, just so it won't confuse. It'll only confuse the techies. It might confuse Adriel too, because he works with that.
I'm that weird non-techie, or I guess non-dev techie. I'm not sure how to describe myself. Tech adjacent. Yeah, there you go.
Well, as I said, I'll just refer to it as the kitchen table then, because basically it's just for people to gather around the kitchen table, really, and make something and develop something out of that. So I'll use the kitchen table then.
And that would be the private part, right?
Yeah, the kitchen table.
The first page, the landing page, would say, welcome to the reception of the site, and then
you must speak pirate to get in. I think we should all be pirates, because I was looking at the pirate party that's set up and how they set up and that, and I thought, oh, swarms and pirates and things, and I was thinking about making stuff, so I'll make it all kind of pirate tops to it. I was too hot the other day. I don't do sunshine quite well, so yeah, so it's turned me a bit loopy.
So Ghibli, I'll take a look at the video and see if it's a easy fit to get a spreadsheet out, because I'm pretty good with that.
Oh, I don't know if watching the video would be an easy. We had talked about a Habitat for Humanity like structure where 10,000 people are putting in $10 a month, and that would, in my math, equal about 3 tiny homes per month if they're around 30,000 to make. And then once you're living in one, you're paying rent back to the pool. So every like there's 3 different changing. It's how much does it cost to make one tiny house? It could be 20,000, it could be 50,000. I have no idea how much rent you're getting, and then how much a membership fee is, because it grows exponentially, right? We're starting with 3 per month, but as rent increases, holding membership the same, how soon can we get those 10,000 people in houses? By my calculation, it was like 300 years. I was like, okay, that's not quite so sustainable. Yeah, so just wanting to be able to play with those 3 numbers. And I was doing it very like, okay, this month, and then we add it, and it goes like, it is, yeah, my Excel capability isn't enough to, nor is my math, it turns out. I thought my math was better, but
yeah,
does that make sense?
I'm trying to think if I'm trying to decide if I have enough information to try and do a simulation. I think I do. I'll hit you up on Messenger if I'm missing something.
Awesome. I'm going to ask my mom, because she somewhat knows spreadsheets, and I don't know if she can actually do this, but I'm going to ask, so she, she's a parent. She's my parent. But yeah, I'd appreciate that.
If you've got a version that you've already started, it might help to send that to Bentley and to Mom as well. Just because I find that seeing what somebody started on, even if it's terrible, seeing what you've labeled things and seeing what you've tried, at least for me, sometimes it is enough to be like, oh, okay, I see what they're trying to do here.
I know, yeah, because I was like doing it by month of like, and then we go over to the next month, and I was also like trying to have this time lag of 3 months, how long it would take to make one, so you're not paying rent until at that point. But honestly, if maybe you are paying rent for the 3 months we're building it, because it's like a down payment. I don't know.
Building normal standard houses?
Tiny houses.
Tiny, okay.
Yeah. No, you wouldn't be able to build a standard house for 30,000, but being able, like, how much material is in there? Because the idea is also it's a barn raising, like Habitat for Humanity. You're putting in sweat equity, so there's no labor involved, or very little labor involved. You might have to get the experts, but we're all putting in time, so it's only the resources, and we can bulk buy them. And that's also, as you continue on, if you're building 3, you can't bulk buy, but when you're building 15, 20 per month, you can more bulk buy them.
I also wonder at what point we could start looking at the 3D printed houses. I'm not sure if those are all scalable yet or what, but that's been around for a while now, and those seem pretty cool.
Yeah, part of the tiny house model, in my head anyway, is that they're movable. So it means that as you're figuring out how to build a community, you can move them around to see what the configuration is. If I don't like this community, I can move it to somewhere else. That part of shelter is land, resources, and labor. And so land can change, to build a house, right? Like to get a physical structure, you need the land to put it on, you need the labor, and you need the resources. We're sharing in the labor, we're hopefully both buying the resources, then we don't know where the land, like maybe I own lands and I'm putting a tiny house on there. Or we're figuring out an infrastructure to deal with farmers, and there's gonna be 5 here, and like that the tiny houses can move so that they're not, because the other thing is then, cob houses are actually cheaper to build, but then they're physically there. Right. And you legally can't do that in some places. And so like working with the flow of community, you can own a tiny house and move it about, and or if like, I'm just going to use Together Tech owns the tiny houses, then if one person isn't using it, we can decide where they move to, right? But there's more flexibility with the tiny house.
So at least the first wave will be mobile tiny homes, and then after there you can say, Because you might end up with almost like a fleet of mobile ones that can move around, and that may even end up being your crew that's building the other homes.
Mhm.
And then they sort of move around and leave permanent homes as they go.
Yeah, if they can, right? There'd be multiple kinds, but yeah, that was kind of what I'm talking
And
about.
teach
And I was
people
like,
how to build their own houses. And then we have a fractal of. There was at least one culture in the history of the world that were pretty good at moving houses around, and they lived in like the carts, the big carts, and they were known for
caravans.
the caravans, yes, for the dancing and singing, and they were, yes.
Yeah, I think the natives were quite good at doing like sort of mobile homes where they would have certain, I guess, types of settlements that could easily be moved, because you'd go to an area of the prairie, head up, do your thing. Either the weather changes or the herds move, you pick up, you move.
Yeah. Central Native Americans.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess I should probably say Native Americans because Native is a pretty broad term.
Yeah, and then the Mongols back around in ancient times.
The nomads, generally.
Yeah. So, and you were saying rent, so does that mean it goes in perpetuity? It's not you end up owning the house? It's not a mortgage?
Yeah, the idea is if we're getting together as 10,000 people and wanting to house 10,000 people, that you understand, like, you're paying, what I was saying is, I started with 500, it wasn't enough, $750 a month. But the idea is if we're releasing people from game A to concentrate on game B, that $750 isn't necessarily paid by the person. It might be paid by the community, right? That like we need an income that pays for 10 people because we have 10 people that need to live here. Like it doesn't mean necessarily that I'm paying that rent, but the rent needs to be paid for that structure so that there's more houses being built later. So it's like membership fees, and that is how it exponentially goes. Otherwise, we're only going to have 3 per month, right? Whatever the beginning is, it kind of just stays that every time.
Yeah, and I think if that's being done like under the umbrella of an organization that will end up doing other things, that can sort of end, like, I think it totally makes sense for the organization to still own it because it's the group, the co-op, whatever you want to call it, that built it. And if you charge rent and the person never owns it, but the rent is reasonable, then that's already a win over the current system. And if it's sort of meant to be people that maybe normal landlords wouldn't want to rent to, or that just wouldn't because the person couldn't afford it, I think that still ends up being omni-win. Maybe not quite to the extent that the person would want, but it could help them get on their feet. And then
you could give them options though, that if they wanted to sort of like buy the house, wanted to stay, you know what I mean, and wanted to sort of like own somewhere. True. You know what I mean? So you could give them the option to do that as well.
Yeah, like maybe if you paid this for rent, you're just renting. If you paid this for rent, that extra amount goes towards buying it, and after a certain amount of time, you'll own it.
I guess I'm still a bit confused because Jubilee is saying the person in the house may not be the person paying the rent, right?
Yeah, that part confused me. Like, my understanding from what you said is that you would get your subscribers to this housing system. They would be paying into a system that would constantly just be focusing on building new homes, and then you also have people who are paying rent, paying into that same system. So the first year maybe you're building 3 a month, and then the next year, because you've got people paying rent, you might be able to afford to build 4 a month, and then the following year 5, 6, and then 8, and then 10, and so on. I would assume that the rent just goes into there, and if you're having other people pay for it, you might just have like separate projects where like, hey, if you're also wanting to chime in and help people pay rent in this village in California, there's a separate one for that people pay into.
I would just meant like the rent is paid for the shelter, right? So we are saying that if you have this shelter, it's $750 per month. It could be me who pays it, right? It could come out of my disability amount. It could come out of my contract work. It could come out of it, or it could be, hey, these 10 people are living together. They're focused on creating this technology. So the technology company is paying their rent, right? That like it's part of having an intentional community is having an income that pays for whatever it is we set up, right? So it's not, because how do you make money if you don't have a job, right? If you don't have an income. So it's like, right, part of it is coming and trading in a way that is omni-win, right? That is like, oh, we're releasing from game A so that we can focus on releasing other people from game A. maybe I can pay rent, maybe I can't, right? It's on a per person basis, in which case it is the Together Tech that owns it. And if you want to own it outright, then maybe 1 in 10 is sold that way, sold for profit, so that more of it can go back into the system. But the idea is we're just figuring out how do I get a roof over my head that is, yes, I want it to be permanent, right? I don't want to be kicked out because I can't pay the rent, but we got to figure that out because we need more money coming into the pool so that it can go to the next person and the next person and the next person.
Yeah.
Okay, so the membership fees are not paying the rent. That was the part I want to.
No, membership fees are the $10 per month to actually be part of, because with $10 a month times the 10,000, then you can make rough calculations 3 per month. So that is so once you start paying rent, you're no longer paying that $10 a month. You're now paying your rent, right? But in the beginning, it's like, right, the idea is you're helping house people, right? That including you possibly, but maybe not, right? That was part of the conversation that we had. It was like, maybe it is more like Habitat for Humanity, where the 10,000 are focusing on housing 1,000 of us, not 10,000 of us. But yeah, the rent doesn't come from the membership fee. The membership fee is just a way to get money pooled so that we can buy and create. So buy resources to create tiny houses with, that also it exponentially grows because of the membership and the rent that is going to. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And it doesn't need to be $10 a month. That was the other thing, is I was like, maybe it's $25 a month. Maybe it's because the more it is, the more houses we can build, of course.
Right.
But it also depends on what people want to put in, right? Like I'd be willing to put in $10 a month, even if I never got a house. I don't know if I'd be willing to put in $25 a month, probably, but that's probably about my cutoff.
Yeah, and then the interesting part is there any sort of I think of like subscription tier almost, where it's like, is there a reason for the person to pay more, or is it just to pay more?
Well, the idea it would be like we would set it at 10 or we would set it to 25, right?
I see. So there's just a single.
Yeah. On the spreadsheet anyway, right? Not, hey, we have this many people at 10 and this many people at 25.
Right, okay.
But that's also part of.
And in case of like bigger settlements, it would make also sense to connect the rent and paying for staff to perhaps services that the person owning or renting the house, we need any words for it, could provide to the community. If that's, like, for example, there is a community having an open slot for a dentist, and if someone happens to want to leave Game A and everything and just move to a smaller place where for just providing the service that the person already does provide in exchange for money, here would be in exchange for like accommodation and everything that the community provides. So that's an idea.
Yeah, the idea, at least, like, this is a brand new, 2 days ago, I was like, oh my God, these 4 solution raisings solve everything. Like, I'm like, if we can figure out education, because I need my kid to be educated, and with COVID-19, it's like, that's not safe. How do we educate children? Food and shelter and community, so you can move around and have, and if we focus on the autonomous individual, right, that it isn't about everyone has to be omni-win every second of every day. It's like, hey, do you have shelter? Do you have food? How do we have a community? How do we work through it? Then there's no one in power over you once you figure out shelter, food, and community. And then you've freed yourself from Game A and you can start concentrating more on Game B. And so in my ideal world, the people who first get shelter are the people who are most powerful in Game B, right? The people who are most able to contribute to Game B because they're fed and sheltered, and then that's a whole other exponential growth, right? That has nothing to do with currency. Oh, I'm sure it has something to do with currency, but it's, if like the 5 of us were sheltered, right? Like we're creating together tech, we're figuring that out. We're going to be able to concentrate on creating those omni-win solutions, the scheduling app and those kind of things. And whoever those people are, it's not necessarily sheltering the people who are the most in need of it. It's needs / contribution to the community, because there's going to be more impact from that.
I think because you're starting out focusing on the mobile tiny homes, you could sort of, like the part that you talked about with people getting homes and trading services for it, I wonder if your first group are the people that are building the mobile tiny homes. If they set up some sort of like even a possibly permanent community, let's just say somewhere in the US, they get the free housing, and then a part of that is they churn out these mobile tiny homes, which hopefully lowers the cost of it. And then you can ship them out from there and say like, oh, okay, we'll figure that from this point we can ship out the mobile tiny homes, in a 100-mile radius. And then you can plan those spots and set up your sort of mobile communities, and they can move around. And then later on you set up another permanent one, maybe on the opposite coast.
Yeah, there's a reason it's one of the 4 solution reasons is the meta community, is the 100 groups of 100 figuring out those solutions for meta community of like, hey, how do we do plumbing? How do we do this? How do we do that? And a bigger infrastructure of where do you want your tiny house to be, right? Like which community do you want to live in? And are they okay with you being there? And what is that work you're doing that is contributing to game B around it? And yeah, that was part of the solution raising was, hey, why don't we house the people building it first? And they could even travel around, right? Like they could be a community that travels around and builds them because they're a grouping of 10 families that although they're nomadic, right? They're like, yeah, this is our ideal. We get to have a connection and community, but we get to travel around, or they have a permanent structure and they ship them out, or I mean, any number of things, right? It's like what works for them as an individual and what works for the bigger goal to get more houses.
That ended up being very cool. Like having this nomadic tribe of settlement builders, but like in the modern day.
Yeah. And tech, it's like the builders and the tech people, right? That are like, hey, building, I want that. I want the other options, like buy a hotel and just start a tech company, which is also an option, but figuring out together, how do we house ourselves? How do we keep growing that?
Kind of like being a snail. I just imagine the tiny house that I can just take with me everywhere I go, and then I would be able to pick the best location that feels just right at the moment, be it at the sea or in the mountains or whatever. That would make sense. And then the settlement would not be a set of houses and renting and everything. It would be more like the space for camping, where you can just get your house into the spot, into the place, and then it could connect to power, water, and everything that's necessary. And then you could live there for as long as you want, or as long as the community lets you stay, in case you are not the best member of communities. But yeah, that would make sense.
I think it's sorry, continue, Matush.
There is something to it, being able to move along with everything. Like if my house had legs, and I could tell it to just slowly move somewhere else, that'd be nice.
Mm-hmm. And that is I don't want to be nomadic. I want to be in one location and develop roots and do that. But I would love for other people to be able to come through that community. And I would love or if I was nomadic, I would like to have 5 or 6 families, especially one with a kid around my kid's age, that we were traveling together. So we still have that connection, those roots. And you still need to grow food, and you still need to do those things which require more of a settled location. But yes, as an individual, if you want to, you can travel around and see this bigger connection. And as long as the community is willing and you're needed, that can go. And then there can also be ones that are more permanent. And, there's maybe 2 nomadic people throughout it. And there's just a lot of, resilience, right? That there's a lot of options that can happen. And it's about the individual and the group of what works for you, what calls to you, where do you want to be? If you want to be in the mountains one week and then the ocean the next, awesome. And you have this bigger meta community that you can go, you're not just going and parking at the ocean. There's this ocean community and this forest one. And you've probably connected with them on video chats in the meta community and all this other stuff. So, and all over the world, right? I can go in to New Zealand to know that there's going to be one. I probably won't move my tiny house. I will have to trade, right? Or something like that. But
and I saw
sorry for laughing. I was just had this vision of a sort of a house with legs. That just made me laugh. The house with legs reminded me of Baba Yaga. I want one of them houses.
Yeah, it's slightly different an idea. did you see the Mortal Engines? I think the title was, and it was about, it's kind of science fiction, and about the future in which cities are movable, and it's like you have the biggest around was London at the moment, I think. So it was like whole city on very, very huge, giant. What's the trucks? I think is the something you have on a tank, and it was able to move like whole thing. And I just imagine, because there can be tiny houses in forms of just trailers that people use, especially in US, I guess. And yeah, and then I also remember seeing some projects about not so tiny places. Like you would have everything could be packed on a trailer, but then it could expand when you arrive at the place you want to be. And then you have like not very small house. It was like normal size almost. So there's something to that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I actually want to live in a real house.
Mad Max, but solar punk.
Sorry, Adrian, go.
I said I'm picturing Mad Max, but solar punk.
Solar punk, yeah, definitely. Much.
So it's like that, this big caravan of like a giant sort of moving center part and all these tiny homes and, just people's vehicles all in a caravan, but, instead of dystopian.
Like the Burning Man and all the vehicles there, just art.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Which
sorry, Jim, you were saying something at the same time.
Very, very big advantage over what we have now. And what we have now is houses that are just functional, but they are not, or not always, at least, piece of art. Piece of art. What? When I think about solar punk, what comes to mind is like places or villages in which every house is slightly different, and every house and every building is not only just a place performing a function, but also something that was created to be both functional and beautiful, and and state of art something. It would provide a very, very good environment, much better than like having rows of same size, same look houses that we have now in so many places.
I can't hear you, Jude, but you're not muted.
Oh, you're muted.
And now your software muted.
Hey, technology.
Okay, now I can hear you.
All right. Oh, and now I don't remember what I was going to say, but hey, at least I can be heard.
Okay. So I'm wondering how this ties into something that I've been like sort of trying to figure out how it fits into Together Tech and this whole thing, which is like I've got a fair number of Game A ideas, and I'm wondering, or like not even Game A, profitable enterprise ideas, which could very easily fit into a Game B enterprise and possibly help fund tech, tech projects and housing and stuff like that. So I guess I'm wondering how those two fit together just at the most basic level, and then how to start the sort of profitable company piece, but under like a co-op umbrella where, eventually you would end up where the people working on it would be getting a salary, but then all the profits of that company would just be going into this Game B ecosystem to help, pay for Reason Score and WikiLection and housing. And
that's one of the reasons I know we share this vision somewhat of like, instead of having an intentional community that's source of income is food-based, right? Hey, we're gonna make our own jams, we're gonna make our own honey, which is we're feeding ourselves and feeding, maybe we have that connection, and maybe that is how some of them make an income. But technology is powerful, like profitable, and if we can use it to create Game B, why not? So yeah, if we can create ones that it's fully transparent where the money is and where it's coming from, where it's going, but it's also, yes, paying people a living wage and creating something that is profitable. And there's a ton of technology that we've had that are ideas that could be profitable and in a very omni-win way.
Yeah, what I have in mind is it's like an OmniWin Blackstone. where it's like this giant company that owns tech, that owns, farms, that owns real estate, owns all the stuff, where the tech is meant to make money and the real estate is meant to grow and also make money, but it's not paying out shareholders. It's going back into the company to help, buy more tech companies and help start more tech companies and do more real estate so it can grow even more.
I think fingers in lots of pies, Adriel. Fingers in lots of pies.
Right.
Different types of pies as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Diversified. It's a good idea in game A. It's a good idea in game B. So, and then I guess on that note, I'm wondering if either Bentley or Matoush either A, knows Salesforce, or B, wants to learn it. Because I've got a couple of projects that I'd like to do soon, and I know my part of Salesforce quite well. I'm not a developer. If push comes to shove, I might learn it for this, because that I think is a pretty narrow way to learn it. But I think it would also be cool to start a project with like me, a developer, and somebody of a more like marketing role to get that launched, because you don't need that much to do an app in that ecosystem.
It's funny because you mentioned Salesforce, because I just downloaded the career guide to Salesforce because I was looking for something and I fell across it and I was like, "Ooh, what's this?" So I just downloaded it to see what it was all about and that. So I'd be interested.
Yeah, I mean, it's potentially a very profitable industry. There are very large companies that only offer things on top of the Salesforce ecosystem. That's my day job, is I'm a Salesforce admin. But
so you have some plugin ideas for Salesforce.
Some Salesforce app ideas, as they call them. But yeah, essentially a plugin where it's like one is a really easy win. Like I have to go do a bit more research, but it's an industry where there's I think the company I work for pays I want to say $50,000 a year on this tool that I think you could build a simple layer in Salesforce and maybe charge $10,000 a year. And all of a sudden you've got this thing that is saving companies money, and now you've got this $10,000 a year going into a software company. If you have 10 of those, you're at the $100,000 mark, and that's, in my mind, a lot easier bridge to gap with companies that you can directly market to. They've got sort of their store with the App Exchange for Salesforce, all that type of thing. I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch for Salesforce, but
yeah, I've one of the options for me making money is to make some small to medium size plugins and different. That's usually a good way to start rather than building a product completely from scratch. You're building on someone else's thing, but it's usually a temporary thing, or you can't rely on it fully. But it's a great place to start. So maybe we should schedule some time and see if I agree on the market, because it would take an investment of time, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's, I guess, a part of the long-term conversation for this. It's a project like this. What does that look like for the people who start it versus, after it's actually a company operating, paying people a salary? That one's obvious. It would operate fairly like game A, just, as omni-win as possible. But the founders and sort of that initial startup crew, there would be special accommodations because you can't really pay them until it's launched.
Yeah. And if you're founding a company like that, then you know that you're not going to become Bill Gates or Elon Musk, because
yes,
you're not allowed to
exactly. The founders, it would end up being probably in the company overall, I would think, which I think is how Mondragon works, I've heard, where there's a capped multiplier where the highest paid person can only make X times what the lowest paid person is.
And you don't get equity in the company either.
Right, exactly. All the equity goes back into the company to help it grow. So you are going to end up as Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. You won't become a billionaire, but you could end up being on the board of $1 billion company. You just wouldn't have direct access to that money in the same way that a game A player would.
Which, it turns out they don't have that much of a direct access.
Exactly. It's not actually that.
It's all on paper, but
liquid for them anyway.
Yeah, but at some point, a lot of it is. Yeah. So that would that'd be interesting. I hadn't combined my game A designs with my game B aspirations yet to think about the impact of building something really cool, watching it make $1 billion, and then making the same salary I'm making now.
Well, I do think,
I haven't quite
at least for the start, there does need to be some sort of like a, not even comparable in numbers wise at all, but some sort of like a, hey, if you're a part of that founding crew, where if you were to, because I could keep this idea and just Game A, incorporate as a for-profit company and potentially make a bunch of money, right? Or I could join up with you and we could do that in a Game A company. So yeah, there is that part of what's the draw to bring this to Game B.
Yeah, an incentive for the investment and the risk taking, but not an unlimited upside,
right.
Which
is
silly. People are saying like, well, if you don't have an unlimited upside, who would start these businesses? I'm like, do you really think if Bill Gates got a couple billion less than he has now today, he wouldn't have started Microsoft?
If he got 1/10 what he has now, you don't think that's good? I've only got, how much is he worth? 80 billion? Let's say he only has 5 billion now. Oh, well then just throw it all out.
Yeah, I would never started the company if I knew that limit was there. I don't think so. Anyways, yeah.
That's the, like, to say that there isn't a risk to start a company, there of course is. And so if you're taking on the risk, there should be some kind of incentive. I mean, we're taking on a risk, but we're also choosing. Like, it's like, right, I choose to spend this hour taking on, like, on my deathbed, why did I waste that hour? No, that's not going to happen. I'm going to be happy that I was here. But there's like, if we're putting in tens of thousands of dollars, you know what? I'm going to need a financial compensation that is equivalent later on. And to be in that tension, but know that you're never going to make $1 billion, because tech is risky and yet it's powerful. And if we do it together, it's less risky and more powerful. But there's a ton of potential for profit. And if we can be in that and be like, where is that profit going so that it can create more Game B, it's upside all the way in my mind. But.
So Martush, is that something you're interested in as well?
Yeah, I would definitely take a look at it. And yes, it sounds good. And besides, what I wanted to add to this is we as humans, all we have is, as I recently heard, someone said, what we have is time, energy, and agency. This is all we've got. And there's nothing else. Money and profits and power and everything. These are illusions. So I need to stop right now. But yes, the Game B for me starts with freeing up my time, my energy, and my agency from external forces. And when I do that, I'll be happy.
I like that. And so I guess there's at least the two different parts. There's the actually talking about the project, but then there is the kind of trying to build a system around what would it take for somebody like me or Bentley or somebody who like has skills that are in demand in Game A and could make a Game A salary, and if you started a company be quite well off. What are the advantages? And I think one of the advantages once the company is established is you take away that initial risk part where you say, in Game A, if you were to invest and to get a loan and invest your own money, that's obviously you taking a risk where in Game A you should have some sort of a payoff or you wouldn't do that. Which kind of goes back to
it would be interesting if it was kind of a universal basic income thing that you're going to make this salary and you now at some point maybe you don't have to work or don't have to work for the next year, and then you can focus your time on other Game B projects and other people take over.
Right. Yeah.
Or you can fund someone else or something. That would be an interesting thing, because that's one of the things that makes it rough about not having such a big. The reason I was able to take all this time and work on Game B projects is because I, made some extra. I'm not working. I haven't worked for 6 months, but that's going to come to an end. So it'd be interesting. If we could. So it'd be interesting to sit down and figure out how to calculate what that risk and what the upside is and what the limits are.
Yeah. And I think with this particular thing, one of the advantages is that risk to start a company is incredibly low because you're working on somebody else's infrastructure. All you have to do is learn that ecosystem, which, if you plan to do other projects going forward, is then waste of time. And then the only potentially waste of time is actually doing the project.
Yeah, and it doesn't have as high of an upside because you're on someone else's lawn and they can kick you off at any time.
Well, Salesforce is pretty solid there, and actually a couple of the projects that I have in mind, there's a good chance that they would end up buying, which then has a a different conversation on what happens if somebody acquires a Game B project. Can they? And if they can, then what's the Game B payout versus what goes back into this company to help fund the other stuff.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to work out all those a model kind of agreement, and that makes me think maybe Protocol of, is that one of them? There's a couple places where they're working on kind of the agreements of organizations that are in this space of not unlimited profit. So it'd be good to see what's already out there instead of just
for sure.
ourselves.
Right, well, this was a fruitful hour. I'm going to duck out pretty soon so we can meet our third person in our culture of we starting with 3 pretty soon and get some stuff going for that. So we'll have a chat. I see. Oh, never mind then. I just saw the private chat was that that's going to be. Never mind. If I would read things, we'd be fun. All right, we can still hang out for another few minutes. My vision in the beginning when I first came into Game B was a Netflix of apps, right? So people were paying $10 a month to get access to a catalog of apps. And the issue is we don't have any apps. So why would anyone put $10 a month in? That being said, if you had 10,000 people putting $10 a month in, so we could go out and buy apps. So we could say, hey, what's the most useful one? My guess is there's tons of companies that would rather be bought by anyone but Google. And they have that effect, like they can see how much competition there is and that they're probably gonna die away. And if we just want them for our 10,000 people, right, the team building ones and all of these different ones, then I think there would be a profitable game.
Yeah, I wonder if we were around and had that money when what was the good thing that did the
Good Guide?
The Good Guide, yeah. So that would have been something that maybe they would have preferred to sell to a large cooperative rather than a large company. Although there may have been problems with scaling, that the reason why I need something bigger than that.
And I think it becomes an interesting conversation when you're acquiring companies as a Game B Omni-win, because I think you would sort of end up going to a company and say, hey, you have this value in a Game A world, but based on our charter, this is our minimum wage, this is how much we pay people. So if we were to take your company and turn it, into our model, it would actually be making this amount a year, so we're only going to pay you X.
So we would we'd only be winning a sale of that if they had a aligned moral compass,
or even if their company was profitable enough for us to be able to make those changes, right? Which is sort of saying we'd only buy companies that are actually sort of structured in a way to be profitable without underpaying people.
Right.
If that's your business model, then no, we're not going to buy you.
Right. The only thing is that in all of those cases, a Game A company will pay more than we will.
Right.
So because they pay on the future potential of the unlimited potential profit. So there has to be a reason why a person would sell to us. And like Jubilee said, I don't know that there's a lot of people out there that wouldn't sell to Google, because I think a lot of the people that go into it are trying to be Jeff Bezos.
But there's also it's not just that some people would definitely sell to Google. If they're going to pay, 100 million and we're paying 100,000, clearly we know who you're going with. There's no reason to go with us. But when there's competition in that area, right? If we're, instead of building our own food app, buying one, Google's not going to buy them because they're like, we're just going to recreate you. And we're kind of in the same position, but you already exist and you already have a customer base that you can bring on board. And if you can see that your thing, that someone will pay you $100,000 instead of you just going into the ether and never existing anymore. That is the kind of we need a food app, we need a financial one, a one like this, and sort of look at what's out there. And in the beginning, no one's going to sell to us because we don't necessarily have enough money, we don't have enough. But later on, when we are the option, because it's if you sell to Google, won't have money because why? We will be acquiring more things, or a company that's structured like this, right? That is owned by humanity. Would have more power, but not in the beginning.
You could, in the later stages, you could end up with sort of, I don't know, the human resources version of economies of scale, and just being efficient, where when Google buys a company, in a lot of cases, they just sort of leave that company alone and see if it, can turn a profit as is, and then see how they can tie it into their system. If the thing was, hey, companies that we acquire, we might not need the full-time marketing resources, if those marketing people get absorbed into this marketing team that's company-wide where they can be working on a bunch of stuff, you might end up being able to be more profitable there. And I think what realistically what you'd end up with is most of the companies under the umbrella are companies that were started under it. So it's sort of, if you have an idea, you can either go to the Game A world and say, hey, I want to put up my own, my own money, or if I'm, a salesperson, I'm going to try to get investors, and then I give up a share of the company, all that sort of Game A stuff. Or we give them an option, well, you can come here, where we take away pretty much all the risk from that start, but then you also don't get the same payout. So it's, do you want like a huge payout but a huge amount of risk, or do you want a pretty decent payout for a minimal amount of risk and an organization, that you can feel good being a part of? Because I think you won't.
We're at the hour, so that's probably a good enough place to
Fair enough.
Stop.
All right. Thanks for hanging out. What is our next? Oh, next week we are doing this at 2 p.m., 5 hours later than we normally start. It'll be our last time doing it if it's just the 5 of us showing up. So if I'm going to post it tomorrow, and I will tag the 3 people I know who were in that hemisphere, and we will see who shows up. But last time I only posted it I think the Thursday before the Saturday. So this time we'll give it a little more leeway and see if people come. All right. Thank you, YouTube and Facebook. See